It is time to talk about your personal brand. Harold Hillman, Executive Coach, joins me. Are you actively shaping your personal brand at work? Morning to you, Harold.
Good morning, Mel.
So what exactly, when we talk personal brands, give me a bit of background on what a personal brand is.
If you're in a role at work which requires you to influence other people, then it's an important question to ask yourself in terms of brand. When it comes to a brand or your personal brand, the fundamental question is, how do I want people to experience me? And I often use the analogy of you visiting your favorite restaurant that you go back to over and over and over again because the experience is very affirming, not just in the quality of the meal, but how the staff make you feel. Or when you go to a particular barber, stylist who may be way out of your way, but there's just something about the consistency and the experience that draws you back in. If your role really is to influence people, it's important for them to have a consistent experience with you, which equates into a personal brand.
Well, you're right. If you put it like that, often you'll go to a certain cafe because you know that they have their eggs Benny like this, and if you go back and they're different, right, you might not go back.
That's right. It is the consistency. I think about this often. I have a couple of favorite restaurants here in Auckland, and I go to them regularly because I can expect the experience, which is very it's pleasant, it's affirming, and those types of things. It's no different than you as a person, that you want people to be pulled into you, as opposed to withdrawn from you. And so it is important, particularly in roles where people really need to put themselves in your hands, that they have a consistent experience with you.
So we can apply these same principles, that like our favourite restaurant or our favourite hairdresser, to our personal brand, can't we?
That's right. That's right. It goes to the heart of trust. And trust underpins the connection that you have with any brand. And again, consistency factor. There's four critical things that you really want to focus on for people to, again, be drawn into you. One of those is, are you good at what you do? It goes to the heart of credibility. Are you who you say you are? So it's important to be on top of your game. I use the analogy of sharpening your saw if it's rusty. So do you need to get back on a learning curve around a particular skill or expertise that may be holding you back? And no matter what your trade or profession may be, do you invest enough time in making sure that you are up to speed on the latest? So one of those elements, Mel, is just credibility. I've mentioned the consistency factor, and that is are you volatile? Are you too volatile with people? On some days you're receptive, but on other days you're cold. Or even the quality of your work. Is it consistent in how you deliver it? Or is it all over the place? And so people need to have a consistency with you. The third factor that I would suggest people is, how well do people know you? Do they have enough context around you, the whole person, not just the expert, but do they know you as a person, where there's a little bit more ability to connect?
Can you? Sorry, continue.
Go ahead, Mel. I'm sorry.
Can you, with your personal brand, what happens if you've started at a work? Because we're talking about personal brands essentially at work. You've started one.
That's right.
You started in a particular way, and you really want to change the way you've been perceived. Is it possible to change your personal brand in the workplace?
It is, and it is helpful sometimes to be explicit about the fact that you are shifting in terms of a particular perspective or the way that you want to work with other people. There's a tendency sometimes, once we have an experience with a particular person, we're likely to lock them in a frame. And sometimes if you want to shift that frame, you have to be pretty explicit about it in terms of something that you're going to be doing differently now that you believe will have impact. People will see when people develop a theory about you, they see what they want to see and they hear what they want to hear. And so if you really want to shift your brand, sometimes it's important for you to signal to other people that you intend to do things differently now.
That would often happen, I'd say, if you're moving up the management chain, so to speak. So you're going from being a colleague to a manager.
That's right. A very good point. That you have with your peers, you have a bit more of a trusting and open relationship. When somebody becomes your manager, typically you're a little bit more guarded around that. And so if you're in a scenario where you're now being promoted to being a manager, a big part of your brand would be to make it easy for people to come in, have a conversation with you, talk with you, be open with you. That's a big part of influence, is the idea that other people matter, and that even though you may be the manager, there are many things that you can learn from people who work for you.
So where do you start? Is there like a template that you can download so you can figure out how to build your personal brand?
Well, again, I think it goes to the heart of being trustworthy, and the important factor there is that credibility, the consistency factor, the fact that people know you. Affinity is important as well. You know, sometimes we focus a lot on to do and sort of action oriented in terms of what we need to do. There's also this idea of there's doing and then there's being. And being is a huge part of your brand, in that sense that sometimes you just make space for another person, where the conversation is not necessarily about work, but more about life.
What about getting a little bit carried away? Can you over-engineer it? I mean, how do you make sure that it's authentic?
It is important to be authentic. That is huge around your personal brand. The most important thing that sits under your brand is your authentic self. And you can use tools and frameworks to improve your influence, but you have to give people the real you. And so what I advise people to do, I wrote the book, The Imposter Syndrome, back in 2013. And the whole point behind that book was for people to take the pressure off of themselves to be perfect. It open up, let people connect with you more if you don't feel the need to always be the one with the perfect answer or those types of things. Laugh at yourself. Be okay with making a mistake. Let other people help you be successful. That is really the essence, Mel, in terms of giving people a real person to connect with. So sometimes you can over-engineer your brand. I would suggest to people, don't do that. Give people an authentic, consistent experience.
Absolutely. Harold Hillman, thank you so much for your time this morning. Executive Coach, Managing Director from Sigmoid Curve Consulting Group. How to build your personal brand, why it is important. You just go to Instagram and have a look at some of the influencers there talking about personal brands and not building them correctly. They're all over the shop. You don't know what they stand for, and that's what you need to know.